The night a storm is rising in Africa, and its epicenter is not Moscow, not Beijing, but Ouagadougou. Ibrahim Traoré, the 36-year-old soldier, turned president of Burkina Faso, is rewriting the rules of power in a way Washington never saw coming. While American diplomats were busy chasing headlines in Ukraine and the Middle East, Africa's youngest leader was quietly flipping the board on the West. This isn't just another cool story, it's a revolution with a blueprint. Trevor didn't inherit a wealthy superpower or a global empire, but he did inherit something far more dangerous for Washington: leverage. Gold, uranium, rare earth minerals, the building blocks of the green economy, the next generation of technology, the lifeblood of the world's future. For decades, the West treated Africa as a resource pit, a supplier of raw materials at bargain prices. But now, for the first time in living memory, Africa isn't begging for scraps. It is setting the table and demanding to be heard. The West thought it had the playbook memorized: sanctions, threats, diplomatic pressure, tools that once brought governments to their knees. But Trevor flipped the script. He didn't bow, he weaponized the pressure itself. Every sanction became a rallying cry. Every punishment a reason to deepen ties with Moscow, Beijing and Tehran, by binding Burkina Faso to new partners, and rallying neighbors like Mali and Niger into a Sahel alliance. Traore turned isolation into firepower. A bloc of nations once dismissed as poor and fragile just looked the West in the eye and said, "We don't need you anymore." And the contrast is staggering. While President Biden gives speeches about defending democracy, Traore speaks about defending survival. While Emmanuel Macron warns about instability, Traore is opening new trade corridors with China and hosting Russian military engineers. While Washington argues in policy papers, Ouagadougou is laying concrete, signing contracts, and raising new flags over old colonial barracks. For the West, this is a nightmare scenario, because on the chessboard of geopolitics, Traore just put Africa at the very center. Right now, as you watch this, French troops are packing up and leaving bases. They won't stop permanent. American influence is bleeding out of the Sahel. In its place, a new vision of Africa is rising. Sovereign, defiant, and willing to pay the price of independence. The question isn't whether the West can stop Traore. The real question is whether Africa is about to play its trump card, forcing the world to choose between yesterday's empire and tomorrow's revolution. Because make no mistake, this is not only about Burkina Faso, it is about the balance of power in the entire 21st century. If control over oil shaped the last 100 years, control over rare earths, uranium, and green technology will shape the next 100. And Ibrahim Traoré has already positioned Africa as the indispensable supplier. Even the smallest nation, once written off as irrelevant, is proving it can shape the largest empires. But the story doesn't end here. On the streets of Ouagadougou, thousands chant Traoré's name, waving flags and demanding a new Africa. In Bamako and Nairobi, leaders echo his calls, promising a future free of Western dictates. Underground markets are shifting, currencies are realigning, and young Africans are daring to imagine that their continent is no longer a pawn, it is a player, and the West is rattled. European energy companies, once dominant in the Sahel, are losing contracts. American diplomats warn of instability, but find fewer allies willing to listen. The old order is cracking, and the cracks are spreading fast. If you think this is the end of the story, you are wrong. This is only the opening chapter of Africa's great realignment. In part 2, we uncover how China and Russia are racing to bankroll Traoré's revolution, how new pipelines and railways are rewriting trade maps, and why Western strategists are quietly admitting it may already be too late. Because this was never just about Burkina Faso. It was never just about one young leader. This is about a continent discovering its power, a world forced to recognize it, and an empire realizing that its grip is slipping. The storm rising in Ouagadougou is not passing, yet it's spreading. And by the time Washington wakes up, Africa's trump card may already be on the table.